Ladies and gentlemen, I am joined by the co-host of the Hoop Genius podcast and the brains behind the True Geordie. It's Laurence Mckenna.
Yeah, I'm actually, a lot of people say that now, but the problem is that we've actually worked out that Bryant might be smarter than me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's, it's scientifically proven or something like that. I don't know. But thanks a lot. It's a good intro. It is a good intro. And it's good to be on a basketball podcast. It's not, you don't get the opportunity very much in England. So it's good, just good to chat.
Well, you do actually, you do talk a lot about football on the kickoff and talk a lot about football with True Geordie. And I thought it'd be a nice change up for you. You do have the Hoop Genius podcast, which you do host with Mo and Yanni.
Great guys.
It's a very great podcast. I would definitely recommend anyone checking it out if you are a fan of basketball, especially if you're looking to get into basketball from the UK. Is with lockdown as well, you guys have been absolutely smashing. I know Mo has been working so hard on his content as well.
Yeah, Mo's like just this incredibly hardworking, like genuine, industrious. Like he's everything you want to have in a co-host or a main host of anything. And he is. I think the main thing with Mo is like he's got actual knowledge. He's not one of those people who picked it up 1 week ago and went, "Yeah, I think I love the Miami Clippers," and you're like, "Oh, cool, okay." So he's been living this his whole life. So it's such a pleasure to do. It's a bit like with Brian when you're talking UFC. Yeah. You can go back as far as you want. You can ask whatever you want, and there's always an answer. There's always a way of having an interesting conversation. I think that's like it's a gift if you're someone like me who's trying to direct the conversation.
Yeah, and like you do a really good job of doing that and trying to drive all conversation. I love the first episode where you have the soundboards and you got John Wall. You're getting buckets.
That's still my favorite sound. I kind of stole that from another podcast though, because there's another podcast called it's called Buckets by Amir Blumenfeld, who does like a really sick podcast. And I had that sound and I was like, I just love that audio. And then when I listened to his podcast, I was like, that's where I thought it was from. So it's there's so many great sounds as well in basketball. Like, it's such a great sounding thing. So I'm looking forward to the new season or whatever it is, this new iteration of basketball. Because the bubble, but they're calling it like it's a new game or whatever the hashtag is, or like it's a totally different game or whatever. So I'm looking forward to seeing what it's like, seeing whether you can actually hear the players or, because I'm going to be fascinated to hear LeBron shouting at someone.
Oh, J.R. Smith is going to have it as soon as it comes up.
Yeah, exactly. I'm actually interested to see what J.R. is going to be like because, we've not seen him play basketball in quite a while. And the last time we saw him, he was, memed. And that wasn't even really his. It was his fault, but the overall outcome of the game wasn't even really his fault. So I'll be interested to see if he's sort of got a point to prove. And I know the Lakers do. So.
Oh yeah, a lot of people are rooting for the Lakers. Being LeBron, and like hopefully he can go and get that ring. Have you had a look inside of any of the NBA vlogs? Like I know JaVale McGee and Matisse Thybulle, and
so Tybulle's the one that I watch. I've watched, well, not religiously. You can't really watch a four-part series religiously, but that's the one that I've enjoyed a little bit more. I think his editing is a little more spot on, whereas JaVale McGee just seems to sometimes leave things in, and you're like, why is this in here? That's partly. We're going to discuss that on this week's Hoop Genius podcast, but like the main thing that I was interested in is like this insight into the bubble, right? And what they can do, what they can't do, what these guys also think is interesting and what they don't think is interesting. Yeah. And then when you're watching it, you're like, right, why are you all showing me all the testing? Like, I know that the testing goes on. Show me you guys playing golf or show me you guys like fishing or whatever. What do you think of the vlog so far? Because I've quite enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, I love seeing because JaVale McGee, like when I first started getting in, he was being memed on by Shaq,
right?
And to see his growth has been amazing, especially coming into the player that he is now, going through Golden State and now being at the Lakers.
Yeah,
it's really interesting to see what he's like in the bubble, like coming in from getting a lift from his wife and his little kid, and having all the growth and like it's like a new experience for everyone to see. So it's really intriguing to find like what the players are doing, what the meals are like as well, because looking at
great.
They look like they're as dry as anything. But to see JaVale McGee is a vegan as well, so he's having the special treatment. Him and also J.R. Smith, as we previously mentioned. So
I think is Dwight a vegan as well now? I think Dwight Howard might be. He's at least healthy. I'll put it that way. He looks vegan. If you can look vegan, like he's got that. There's very low body fat. Like he's looking way leaner. I don't know which one I like more. I used to really love Dwight before he sort of pissed Kobe off or whatever happened with him, and I really thought he could be the guy. And it's just gone so south. But JaVale's an interesting one because I think he's underappreciated in a way where it's like he doesn't actually get many points in the game. I mean, he's a decent rebounder if we can give him that. But he's actually he seems to be a good presence in any of these teams, and you kind of need that sometimes. And I think especially since he's been with Golden State, he's seen as this, like, I don't know, almost talismanic, like, we need a guy like that in the dressing room kind of guy. I like him, but I stupidly picked him for my fantasy team this season, and he consistently got me like 8 points. But
at least it's consistent.
Well, that's the thing. Like, at least he's consistent. But then I'm kind of wondering what happens with fantasy now, because obviously we're starting a couple of days' time, and I picked guys who were leaders for Portland and the Suns. And apart from that, I've got Bam Adebayo, your guy, who I got for $1 in the draft, and I was just like, this is a steal. And I remember in the draft being like, I'm going to put this $1 down, and I'm going to sneak him through easy. And I was like, I did it with my friend, and I was like, someone's definitely going to bid on this guy. Someone's like definitely going to bid. And everyone else was in the chat like, all those people going for stupid niche players, blah, blah, blah. Bam Adebayo is a solid $50 player come next season. He is worth so many points every night. He's great. He's
brilliant, and he's guaranteed at least 10 points and at least 10 rebounds. He is, and the tandem with him and Jimmy is second to none. It's brilliant.
Yeah. And just the dynamic they've overall got on that team. I think those guys really appreciate each other. They enjoy, I think they definitely bring the best out of each other. And not only that, but I think if you can make fun of each other, then you definitely know that you've got quite a tight team there, which I think is good.
Yeah, I think Jimmy Butler kind of wanted that space to try, make fun of the players and make a man out of a lot of the players, which is what he's trying to do at Miami, and trying to toughen up the team, and it's definitely working. The system that Eric Spoelstra has in place, and also Jimmy Butler coming in and really roughening up the style of play. It's working.
I think a lot of people also didn't give Eric Spoelstra the credit that he maybe deserved, or maybe he wasn't able to earn the credit that he deserved because of all the teams that he's coached, and everyone's been like, oh, well, that team coaches itself, sort of thing. But now we're seeing that he's, I mean, we already knew his credentials, because obviously I don't think Pat Riley would back someone like that if they didn't. But it's fascinating now to see what he's doing with those guys. And the fact that they brought in someone like Jimmy Butler, who clearly wanted to be the alpha dog of any of these teams, it's interesting to see how they're managing someone like that. Because, I mean, Eric has probably managed some of the biggest egos in the game and managed to sort of navigate that in a way. Maybe Miami should have won more with LeBron, but even then he managed to navigate those egos. And then they go, yeah, let's give you Jimmy Butler as a challenge. And Eric must just be like, oh my God, can you guys just please help me out a little?
I kind of like put the comparison to giving Jimmy Butler to Miami to giving Balotelli to Liverpool.
Totally.
It was that sort of thing of like Brendan Rodgers, like, I can coach him. No, you can't.
Yeah. And to some extent, I think Jimmy Butler is a very different, or even more of a challenge in terms of his ego, because Balotelli almost goes inward, whereas Jimmy Butler almost goes outward and stuff, like, attacking Cat and people like that. And I really feel like the Timberwolves probably regret that now, because I mean, they ended up with D'Lo, which is good, but they're still not really ever going to be a challenging team.
No, not really, unless they can get that trio of they've got Cat, they've got D'Lo, and then also maybe bringing in Devin Booker as well. That trio is always said that they wanted to play with each other.
Booker would be incredible.
That could be the next big three.
Yeah. I mean, Booker doesn't even look that big, and he's a good one. And D'Lo doesn't even look that big, but that is technically a big three.
Oh yeah, but that's the next super trio.
I love that. Yeah, is that even possible anymore in the NBA? I don't know if that's even possible, because also I think with like minutes rotation and stuff, and kind of all these twos going around the league, I guess there are. I mean, in LeBron sort of makes up a third member of a big three with all the other numbers. Yeah. Like all the other people are almost parts of the one more person. I just feel it's so sad that Chris Bosh sort of, what happened with Chris, because he really, I think now not now, but after LeBron left, we'd be seeing the value of someone like Chris Bosh in the league. Yeah. And I kind of think the big two would have almost come a bit earlier if we'd have seen that.
Yeah, Chris Bosh ending his career short, with his blood clot situation. It was really heartbreaking to see, because me and my friend, we were both Miami fans growing up, and we'd always be the Wade and Bosh, like we'd always play together as that tandem. And it was like, who do we go to next? Like we don't have anyone, and it was heartbreaking.
I think it ended Wade's career a little early as well, because obviously when LeBron went, it was sort of like, well, I'm leaving you with, you know, another great piece. This is potentially another championship team, but I'm not leaving you so good that you know, I can't win it in the East. So it's an interesting one. Chris Bosh also is a great personality, and I think, you know, he's a very smart guy, and I've heard him interviewed a couple of times. I really appreciate what he's got to say, because I think he's also he reads a lot, because he wasn't always the inside guy, but he was also the inside guy. So he had both inside and the outside. I think that was fascinating for him.
Yeah, definitely. So what I like to do on these interview series is I like to take it back where it all began for my guests in basketball.
Right.
So you've mentioned this on your podcast, on the Hoops Genius podcast, but
we can unwrap it again. Sure.
Yeah. It's a nice, lovely present that we're going to unravel to a different audience.
I don't think this is a present. But okay, yeah. Whatever you're unwrapping right now, it's pleasurable, but we don't know what it is.
Yeah. So what was it like going to your first ever basketball game? What was the first basketball game you ever went to?
That's a good question, actually. I mean, in terms of actual American basketball, well, it was actually in Canada. It was in Toronto. I went to go and see the Spurs versus the Raptors, and that was just a crazy experience. You know, I'd been to a lot of football. I've been to a couple of English basketball games, and I remember just being like, "Oh, okay, well, this could be similar." And you kind of see things on TV. You know, you see the Raptor driving around, and you see the crowds, but people go, "Oh, it's 20,000 people." So you're like, "Okay, well, it's not as big as Anfield." I've been to Wembley. Like, how impressive can this really be? And then when you get in there, it's this super intense experience. You're maybe 15 feet away from Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu and Kawhi, and you're like, what is going on? Like, these guys, and the thing you really don't appreciate until you're next to these guys is the power of any of them. I mean, even, you know, Tiny Tony or Manu, any of these guys, just how much power they have and how explosive they are. And that counts for all NBA players, I think. And I think a lot of people, because these guys are competing at the very highest level, obviously there's a different index for these guys. So you don't appreciate it until you see them in real life and you're like, oh, I actually couldn't do that. Yeah, you're right. I definitely couldn't do that. And so that was that. And then I saw a London game between, I think it was the Celtics and Philly, when neither team were they were sort of on the cusp of being good, but it was a good game. And then last year I saw the Knicks. Was that last year or was that 2018? One or the other. I saw Knicks Washington, which was just pretty normal. And then the last game that I saw was in Paris, where I went to go and see the Bucks Hornets. And that was great. And I was so lucky there because Mo genuinely hooked me up with a great media pass. So I was, you know, I was that far away from Giannis. And I remember he was coming towards me, and I had my camera in my hand, and I was like, do I do that, or do I do that, or do I do, like, what do you do? And I was like, yeah, put the camera up, because he's in the moment, he's never going to, oh, Laurence from the Hoop Genius podcast, right? So it was pretty bizarre, and we got some great pictures. I'm gonna put that video out quite soon, I think, because I've been kind of sitting on that. And that's kind of my evolution of games. But the first one was very enjoyable, but the last one, I think there was something really special about that because it was in Paris. It felt very, you know, there was something quite cool about it.
And you mentioned, you know, being so close to those Spurs players. You know, you were sitting about 6 rows back.
That was a dream. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah.
And you mentioned Manu Ginobili. Was he I think you've mentioned before that he was the player that you gravitated towards the most.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if I'm honest, I've kind of skipped a step in the story as well, because I obviously everyone had seen Space Jam. And when you're a kid, like I remember when that first came out, and I remember just being like, oh my God, the music, not the R. Kelly music, but the other music, the opening scene, it was like a bit of an introduction into American basketball for me. And I hadn't really been that aware of it before because, you know, how can you be aware of it?
Yeah.
And I'd loved Ghostbusters and Batman. So I was very into like American culture anyway. And I was like, yeah, this is definitely for me. And obviously who doesn't love the Looney Tunes? So I was watching that, and I think everyone got into basketball because of that. But then I try and pick up like little bits of basketball whenever you can find it on TV, or when we first got a computer, like trying trying to find highlights or trying to find some sort of video. And then it really came to the fore in 04, 05 when I bought a PSP. And I had I think it was the Detroit Pistons that year, or the year before that, going into this year, had won it, and they were good. Like, this team were good. They had Chauncey Billups, they had both the Wallaces, they had Rip Hamilton, they had Tayshaun Prince. I think they still had McDyess then, I can't remember. And that was a good team. They were very rough. They were not particularly likable, but they were good. And Ben Wallace was like, just an absolute phenomenon. And this guy was not only did he look like a star, but what he did looked incredible on the court, even though it wasn't always about the scoring. So I remember being obsessed with this game. And then I went to New York, and I went to New York with my mum and her partner and his son. And I remember just in New York just being obsessed with this game. I was just like, every night I go to bed, I'd be like playing it. Like, and you learn new things, and like, you get your first win. And then along comes, maybe before that even, I played NBA Ballers. Have you ever played that? It's like a one-on-one basketball game.
Yeah.
Very simple, rudimental.
Yeah, it's kind of like the basketball version, like FIFA Street kind of.
Yeah, but to be honest, it's better than FIFA Street because it's got it had all the stars. I remember Jermaine O'Neal. For some reason, I was obsessed with him. I was like, Jermaine O'Neal is the man. And then I remember trying to find images of him online. Also, he had that cool Navy Pacers uniform with the lines. Yeah. And Stephon Starbury, as everyone calls him. And my friend was a New York Knicks fan. My best friend at home is a New York Knicks fan, Daniel. And he was really into the Knicks. And like Starbury was big for them at that time. And so we were jointly obsessed. And I think when you have a friend that's obsessed with it as well, it really helps because you can talk about it and they will find things that you don't find and you'll find things that they don't find and you'll both appreciate it. So we had that. And then I played as the Detroit Pistons a lot on this game. And I went through seasons and stuff. And I don't really think I knew what I was doing, if I'm honest. Like, I don't really think I understood it. I just remember being like, right, the ball needs to go in the hole. And you can do it from distance and you'll get more. You do it from close, you'll get less. Yeah. So, and then I didn't really get I got the free throw thing, but it was a hard mechanic. And so I did it. And then I remember asking someone, I can't remember who I asked, but I was like, who is the Liverpool of the NBA? And I was like, at the time, Rafa Benitez was Liverpool manager. And I was like, I want someone who plays like that, like fundamentally good basketball, a little bit of charisma, obviously a bit of flair in those players, but they're in a system, so the system works. And someone's like, oh, you've got to be the Spurs then. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And thankfully for me, it was fun to watch the Spurs at that point because, as functional as they are also amazing to watch. And this was before the era of the three and kind of, draining that. And it kind of went against a lot of what was also going on in the NBA at that time. And I think Greg Popovich really had something to prove. And I've got the Popovich curve. I think it's on the back as well. Yeah, there you go. 2020. Because I can't support Kanye anymore.
Shame.
I just became obsessed with that team. And there was something about it because Manu had his hair back then. And he was quite a striking looking guy. He didn't look tall compared to everyone else. And that felt like me. And I was like, right, so this guy can dunk. This guy is powerful. He can drive to the hoop, but he's also good with his left. I wasn't good with my left, but I was decent with my right. And I was just like, yeah, this is good. And then I picked up a bit of Tony Parker's game when you sort of you could go past someone and sort of scoop it up. And that's a little bit of Dwayne Wade as well. I remember just thinking like, yeah, I'm so sick of this.
Big finger roll. Yeah,
I was a massive finger roll guy. And I had a friend who was way better at basketball than me, and that like really pissed me off, but it made me better as well. And so those were the guys I looked up to. It was Tony and Manu, and I was obsessed with that team, and they're incredible. And then along came NBA 2K, and 2K just changed my life. Like I've got to admit, on the PSP, it was NBA Live or whatever it was. But on the PlayStation, on the Xbox 360, actually, it was 2K. And there was, I think, the cover with Shaq is 07 maybe,
yeah,
maybe 06, 07, I can't remember.
I think they had two covers in a row.
Yeah, and he had the one that I remember is the red jersey Heat Shack,
Yes.
and that was very special. And we started to play online at that point, and we would be up until about 1, 2 a.m. in my friend's like tiny little box room. That was a very small room, and just a TV, a bed, and two controllers. But what we do is it'd be like, right, no, you play and then I play, then you play, then I play, and sometimes we play a half. Sometimes I was better at closing, he was better at opening, and we kind of worked out what was better. But we give the other one the headset, and we'd end up talking to these like crazy guys from America who'd be like, "Hey man, you're shit," and you'd be like, "Oh okay, you know you're shit," and then you'd like turn the controller off, and you'd be like, "Don't want to talk to him anymore." And that I remember one night, like the memory that sticks out for me is we'd been playing all night and we just couldn't win because we were playing like I'm like 20-year-old actual basketball fans who know about tactics and stuff. And we didn't really know about that. And so we were just trying to play, but we were playing with the Lakers. And obviously we had Derek Fisher. And I remember about 1 a.m., there was a game and it was close. And I remember just sinking like shot after shot and being like, yeah, I'm actually going to win this. And then it got to a buzzer beater and we hit it with Derek Fisher. And because it was a buzzer beater, I don't know what happened on 2K, but the game stops and sort of goes black. And then it shows you whether you've won or not. Yeah. And I was like, did it go in? Didn't it go in? And we were both like, and then I remember going crazy and his mum walked in and was like, you guys need to tone this down. And we were like, yeah. And then we were like, yeah. And that was a moment where I was like, wow, that feeling, it was incredible. And it was so addictive. It was so much more fun. I mean, we loved FIFA and Pro Evolution Soccer, but there was just something about that moment that I was just like, it sticks with me for like, even now I'm like, oh, this is so good.
Yeah, and like now, you don't get that sense of feeling when it's like, oh, fade to black. Oh, what's going to happen? It's sort of like the screen shakes. There's everything. There's loads of celebration. I think 2K has kind of got a bit worse now, especially with like the next generation. It's kind of, oh, look what we've got, sweat.
I think that's what the real challenge is with 2K is. It's like, how can you make a game that was fundamentally so good better? Yeah. And I definitely think they improved it so much last year because I played it a lot more. Maybe I just liked it a lot more last year.
No, I agree.
I'm looking forward to the next generation because I'm like, will they change the play? And I remember for a little while, I was similar to you where I was like, not sure about this. And I kind of went away from it. And maybe it was also, I was just busy with other stuff. And then I was like, yeah, I get the sweat thing. Like we get that they can sweat. But I do remember when it first came out, I remember like zooming in on Shaq and like calling my dad and being like, Dad, come look at this. And he was like, yeah, I mean, yeah. And I was like, but he's sweating. I just couldn't get over it. Like it was insane to me that we could even get that level of detail. So what we watch now, it's incredible.
I mean, we're kind of used to that now with the next generation. It keeps the graphics. I mean, I remember the jump from Xbox 360 to Xbox One, the whole trailer of LeBron, and it looked incredible. 2K14 looked amazing.
Incredible.
The graphics for the next gen consoles kind of just went,
Yeah, like I feel like a lot of people sort of went, we've sort of reached our limit here, so we need to wait for another generation of console. Yeah. And I think people also realized like you'll just buy, as long as the players are correct, you'll buy it. And that's the thing that kind of annoyed me about 2K was all the players were correct except for on the Detroit Pistons team. Yeah. Rasheed Wallace is not there. And that's the only thing that annoys me about the whole game. I'm literally like, I want to play as the Pistons. Can't play as Rasheed. And that kind of, it annoys me. I know it's not their fault. They can't get his image rights, but I just wish they had Rasheed Wallace because I'd dominate other guys with that.
Maybe that would tempt a lot of people to play NBA Live. I know that the gameplay definitely doesn't do that a lot.
I remember I had a little love affair with NBA Live for a little while. It didn't last very long. But I remember just being like, yeah, 2K is just 2K just nails the culture and stuff. I don't really do the playground thing or the neighborhood thing. So I just want to play. I want to play basketball. But yeah, it's really good. And to be honest, I'm still not sure that I know all the controls for like, pick and roll, whatever, but when you master that, it's a very rewarding game to play. And I think that's where I learned most of my tactical stuff was like, yeah, I need to know what a pick and roll is so I can, do that. Or I need to know how to do a backdoor play or like any of this stuff, because it's easy to do the dunking.
Yeah.
But it's hard to do the actual play.
Yeah, you got to go through all different button combinations, and especially if you're working like a 5-on-5. I know that they've got the mode pro out.
Yeah.
They play online, and you've got to play like an actual team. It's
which
insane.
I love. Yeah, I've the most people I've ever played with was Mo and Yanni, as two others, and we were actually really good. We played as the Brooklyn Nets, so that one of them ended up with Kyrie and one of them ended up with KD, and I ended up with I think it was Spencer Dinwiddie or someone like that, and I was just like, this sucks. But it's still fun, and you're always talking, and you're always trying to work out a new tactic. So it's I think that's part of it. Just learning about basketball for me. I was like, okay, I can watch highlights, and you see, every morning I wake up and I go to my NBA app and I watch the highlights. That's a great way to wake up, but you don't see the whole team, the whole roster. And I think when you play 2K, you really like explore the depths of the roster, because you're like, right, who can actually score a three here? Who can actually do something when the coach has rotated everyone off, bizarrely, when you're chasing like a 2-point lead and the coach is like, yeah, let's just take all the good guys off now. And you're like, what? How did this happen? Why did this happen? I have no idea. It's crazy.
Now you've got to rely on Jose Calderon to hit threes.
Yeah, for too long as well. It feels like you have like LeBron on when you play as the Lakers for like 2 minutes, and then he's like, okay, let's rotate JaVale and Dwight in, and you're like, sorry, why is this logical to you?
The game, I think, needs a bit of a rework, definitely in that department as well. Did you say that you had a lot of friends, or you and your best friend at the time talking about?
Yeah, I've never had a lot of friends.
Same. That's
sure.
Relatable. The guys are here for relatable content.
So relatable. We're so relatable. Yeah.
So, did you have like a group of friends that played basketball with you, or was it just the two of you that would just?
It was just one-on-one. Like that was partly what I think made it so special for both of us. And we were best friends anyway from a very young age. Like we've been really great friends since about the age of 4, when we met in the playground on the first day of school. And it's moments where you're playing basketball with someone like that, and you're like, oh, this is why we've been friends all this time. Like we have very similar interests, love the same films, all that kind of thing. And I remember just, it was such a special thing for us, because it was also a time that in a small town where no one else really has anything like that, it feels very special to be the two guys that love basketball. And I imagine there were other people that love basketball, sure, but it was almost like we didn't want to know. We were just happy in our own little bubble with, the Knicks. And obviously I was a Spurs fan at the time, so it was particularly good for me. But the Knicks, I remember his Knicks lineup were like Stephen Marbury, Eddie Curry, David Lee, Jamal Crawford, and I can't remember who else it was, but I just remember being like, oh yeah, I remember at the time genuinely, because he thought the Knicks were good. I thought the Knicks were good. This Knicks team fucking sucked. Like, and not to that extent, but like they were bad. But he was able to get the best out of them. And there was something very satisfying as a pair. We would just sort of sit there and go through all the different iterations. And I think, I don't know, that's probably still possible, but I feel like we were so lucky, because it was this transition from when things were offline to online, and you could, if you studied offline, it applied online. Whereas now it feels like you almost always have to be online in order to win. Like in Rocket League or any of these things, you just have to be gaming. Whereas before there was a bit more knowledge of the game that you needed almost.
Yeah, like the more that you watch the game, it's like, oh yeah, this is how this guy plays. This is how this guy plays.
Right.
Let's continuously work and see like how good these guys are on the court. So
yeah.
That we can play, build the craft type thing.
Yeah, and I think 2K is getting much better at reflecting that, and I know what a challenge that must be. But I think it's so fascinating to see how we are now able to replicate people so accurately on the court. Like, LeBron's got his jump, and KD's got, when KD comes back, I guess we might have to replicate his new jump or whatever. But it's fascinating when you're like, oh, that actually looks like that guy. There's something really satisfying about that. Because before, it was just sort of generic. And I remember there was a few times where I dunked with Tony Parker, and I was like, this is unrealistic.
I mean, Tony never left the ground unless it was to lay in that finger roll. He was brilliant at finishing at the rim, but not quite as
Dude, yeah, like I mean, he was so satisfying to watch, and that's what I loved about him, was like he didn't have to dunk, but his finger rolls felt as sure as a dunk. That's amazing.
Yeah, the fancy Frenchman doing his work. It was always
Yeah.
great to. I mean, not really when it's in the finals against the team that I support, but
I'm
there
not
you
even
go.
sorry. Like, I mean, yeah, we put you guys to the sword that year, and that was so satisfying as well. I think the fact that we were those guys, the fact that the Spurs were the team, and I think Greg Popovich takes such great pleasure in doing that, like really screwing someone else over. He's not of a Bill Belichick level, like in the NFL, but he takes pleasure in being a little bit different. And I appreciate that. I like that. I think that's, when basketball is all about trends at the moment, there's something so pleasurable about Greg. And the same with Steve Kerr as well. I think, they could run together and I would actually vote for them, but they are very satisfying to watch. And that's partly why I like Nick Nurse now at Toronto. And, even why you can appreciate someone like Eric as well. I think he's great.
Yeah, Nick Nurse, who was also coached in the British Basketball League over here,
Right.
Someone who's constantly mentioned around the league. Do you know much about the British Basketball League, or have you dipped your toes in?
To my shame, like I don't really know that much because if I'm honest, I don't really know how to get into it. Like it feels like a very sort of niche community in the first place. And it also feels a little bit like it kind of wants to stay that way sometimes. Like it wants to be a bit like, no, we know, a bit like me in my hometown where it's just the two of us. We were happy that way. And I get like, it wants to, maybe it understands finance, needs to grow. But it's always felt a little bit like, we're happy, like, we're real basketball fans. I'm not sure you are. And it's like, I'd love to be able to get into it a little bit more. I know there are a lot of very welcoming people. But sometimes it can feel very tricky to do that, I think. And if you're not there every week, it's even harder.
Oh, absolutely, and it does need a lot of growth at the moment. Whether that be in the upper management or it does need to become a lot more accessible. I know back in the day they used to have the All-Star games, and it used to be a lot more attractive to basketball fans, rather than now it's sort of on the back burner to football, cricket, and rugby in the UK. I think it's because we don't have like a good national team to go off.
Also, just very few locations to play or replicate that are good. And I think many people don't understand. For instance, like with football, you don't need a net. You literally do just need somewhere you can put the ball. Yeah. Whereas with basketball, I think it is one of those things where in order to appreciate how good basketball players at professional level or even at an amateur level are, the hoop needs to be in the right place. You don't necessarily need a backboard, but it would help. And a hoop with a net makes such a difference. I feel like it's, you really notice it when you get there. And I feel like that's the detriment because it's also such an easy sport to pick up and play. It's so satisfying.
Yeah, it really is. And when you do watch it, it's so exciting. And it's a shame that a lot of the British culture does not revolve around the sport because as some people that would love the fast-paced counter-attacking style of football, basketball is really up their alley.
Yeah. And at the same time, I also think I'm kind of happy about that at the moment because it sort of gives sports analysts, which is kind of a category that I'm in, a bit of an advantage because, I look at the NBA and I'm like, they've got this way of analysing this or this way of analysing that, and I can apply that to football. Yeah. And I'm not sure if everyone in the UK has done that, which kind of surprises me because if I was Sky, I would be watching ESPN, I'd be watching, all the basketball coverage because it's 10 times what the coverage of the UK is. It is so much better than what we get in England for any football. And the players are able to be themselves and all this kind of thing. And I don't know, maybe that's the way that they like it in the UK. But there's something quite unsatisfying about the difference between American sports and English sports right now. And I feel like America's just 10 years ahead of us, 20 years ahead of us.
Absolutely. I think that as soon as you get into basketball, you immediately gravitate towards the American side. Like you don't really you don't really gravitate towards the UK side because there isn't that history there.
Or the same spectacle. If I'm completely honest, like not. Or you know what? I'm not even sure it's the expectation of that. I think it's the expectation of spectacle, where it's like if you go to an NBA game, you feel like you're going to something special. And there's something in the UK about the culture which doesn't build for that. And that's sad because it makes it difficult to get a critical mass of people that you need in order to make this a thing where people go, oh, we need to go there. Whereas if you go to a college game in America, it's as big as, if not bigger than the NBA. And there's 8 million people here in London. There's a very diverse culture. There's a very diverse society. There's a lot of people who listen to very diverse kinds of music. There's a lot of people who, want to see more sport and also want to get fit or want to get their kids fit. Basketball's incredible for that. Like, or it ticks every box. And that's what the thing that sort of confuses me is it's like, well, if it's not English, it's not, you know, and you'd be like, well, with all due respect, fuck off.
It's like the lack of cultural acceptance here in the UK. It's like
that too.
The mantra of like, oh yeah, it's not an English sport, we don't want it. You know, it's played over there with the Yankees. You know, it's horrible.
Yeah, and it makes it difficult, but it makes it more special when you find people who love basketball. Yeah. And you know, I think that's the other side to it, is which I definitely benefit from, is like having this niche is. You know, you really make some great friendships, and you meet some really smart people along the way. And, you know, Mo and Yanni and lots of other people like that are really great friends because of that. And, you know, you can get your friends into it a little bit. Like, you know, I've kind of gotten Bryant a few basketball jerseys, and I think The Last Dance has really helped as well. And you know, that I think is the importance. We are at the beginning of the wave rather than the end of it. And I think the frustration is sometimes like, oh, we want to be like peaking. But it's also interesting because when I tweet, like, there's so many people who give feedback, or they're like, oh yeah, I watched this. And I don't know, that's what I like. You start to see people just start to pop up or go, oh, I didn't know you like that. And you know, there's something really satisfying about that.
Yeah, because
also people who know a lot more than I do.
Yeah, I'll just say because not a lot of people would know that you like basketball until it was uploaded on the True Geordie podcast that you know the
Kobe podcast.
Yeah, the Kobe tribute that you did, which was extremely emotional. If I say so myself.
It's so hard. Like I can even feel like the lump in my throat now. Yeah. It's something that I've found so hard to get over. And I still don't know why, because it's like, you know, plenty of really important people in my life are gone, and, you know, a lot of them too soon. But with the Kobe thing, I don't know, maybe it's because I was kind of preparing myself to be a dad at that time as well. And, you know, it's just a lot of mixed emotions in your life when you hear that. And even now, like, I still struggle with it. And I think a lot of people do on a regular basis, because it just felt so untimely, and it felt so wrong, and it still does. And even now I'm talking about it, I just can't, you know, you almost don't want to talk about it because it's just so sad. And not only that, but I don't know, it felt like basketball needed someone a bit like what Kobe was doing right now, and it's just not there anymore.
Yeah, no, I 100% understand the emotion that you go through when talking about Kobe. Like the day, I remember exactly the day that happened. Because my team, the Worcester Wolves, were in the British Basketball League Cup final. It was held in Birmingham, and we won it. I was like celebrating so bad, and then the news feeds pop up. I was like, "What's going on? This can't be real." It's on the TMZ. I don't really know whether to believe this, and then it was reported later, and it was a very up and down, because I know I was speaking to some of the guys that won the BBL Cup final. And they were just in the locker room like, I don't really feel like celebrating, to be honest. Like it was absolutely heartbreaking. So for a lot of, you know, our generation of you know, basketball fans, Kobe was our guy. Like the previous generation was Jordan and Patrick Ewing. Us, it was like AI and Kobe. And for that, it's just sad. I feel
it's
like
too much.
It is.
And I think like the strange thing is, on that day, like I think a lot of people mistrusted the news, and then like it, you know, when it came through, it hit you almost twice as hard. But it was also that everything else was just going on, and I don't know, like that some people pass away on days where there's not much going on, and Kobe passed away on a day where there were loads of like little things, like you say, like the BBL and those kind of things. So it's strange to me, but at the same time, I think it's led to a lot more celebration of the players we have right now. And a lot of people are like, you know, appreciate LeBron while you got him. Like, you know, appreciate Zion from the very beginning of his career. Because I also think a lot of people, when they come into the league, people are a bit questionable over them. I even think it's led to a different treatment of people like Ja Morant, who is like, you know, a very empowered young basketball player who has clearly got a great voice, and, you know, is going at Andre Iguodala, and was like, and people are like, yeah, you know what, fair enough, like, more power to you, like, and, you know, even appreciate people like KD, because I think KD goes wildly underappreciated. But then there were lots of people who were part of that school of Kobe, like, Kyrie and, Jason Tatum. And I think, but all those guys have picked up a bit of a torch to continue that. There's something really powerful about that as well.
Yeah, and it's like the Mamba mentality is something that a lot of people will live by. I was talking to one of the players on this podcast, Kofi Josephs, who he lives by the mantra of Mamba mentality.
Right.
He's so driven. He's so like to do everything. He's thinking about being an entrepreneur before his career is done.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of players are starting to do that now with the untimely passing of Kobe and trying to carry on the Mamba mentality. To celebrate the amazing life that was Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it would be very fitting for the Lakers to win it this year. I don't think many people begrudge them that. It does help that they're the favorites, which sort of puts them in that position. But there will be a lot of tributes to Kobe if that does come off. I still think, I'm looking forward to having a bit of distance from that, because I think the more distance we have, maybe the more appreciation we'll have for what went on. And I think the more we'll see things build afterwards. It's just interesting overall, because I think, there's a lot of basketball players that are getting old. Like within my life, Michael Jordan will pass away. Within our lifetime, people like Mutombo are going to pass away. And there's something, I don't know, pay tribute while you still can, because I think a lot of people spend a lot of time hating on people and, saying like, who's the best of all time? You're like, does it really even matter? Does this conversation in this context really matter?
No, because a lot of players generationally are different. It's about context of
totally.
where they came from. A lot of people will say LeBron, Kobe, MJ. A lot of people will say Patrick Ewing because they're big guy fans, or Wilt Chamberlain, for example, or Bill Russell. And it's a lot of times it's just perspective on who you like. And I think as basketball fans, we share opinions, and sometimes it's just who you like. I think Ja Morant this year has been amazing, and he probably should win Rookie of the Year.
Yeah.
And I think I'm more of a guard fan, so I would pick Ja Morant over Zion. Whereas someone would be like, no, I love big, explosive, guys on the court. I'm going to root for Zion. So it is like, celebrating those players while they come in and having that mentality to just enjoy the game while we have it.
I also think there's a bit of an interesting framing of sports at the moment anyway, with it being so online in terms of the community, and with it means that community frames the way that you see it very often, because your mind naturally just takes things in and takes in ideas. And so when we're looking for storylines or narratives, I don't think basketball players very often go, should we sit down and talk about the best 10 of us? Like they sit down and go, right, how can we get better as a team? How can I be better as a player? And I think the same with football to some extent, like, because we don't have that insight, and it's very difficult to get into that mindset. As the general public, we have to come up with something to talk about. But I do think there's a better conversation than that. And as much as the best 10 players or who's the GOAT, whatever, gets a lot of clicks and gets a lot of likes and gets a lot of jokes, in many ways, I think it's kind of stifling the overall conversation about basketball right now. And maybe it's a good in for a lot of people. I'd love to attract some people in, but I'd love to see a bit more detail as well. Because I think, when you speak to people like Mo, then you get this new appreciation in the same way as when you speak to people like Bryant about UFC or, boxing in general. You end up with a better appreciation, because you're not just looking at someone hit someone else, or just someone put a ball in a hole. You're looking at, something that is very complex and, is, 10 times more complicated than so many other things that you or I do on a daily basis.
And when you understand those complexities of basketball, you sort of get those magical moments. Dame hitting the shot against in the face of Russell Westbrook in the playoffs. You get the whole season of Steph Curry, like the breakout season for Steph Curry.
Yeah.
Like the magical moments that you find as a basketball fan, they just hook you in. You sort of dip your toes in, you look at it. Then you just get pulled in immediately, and I think that's what more people need in the UK.
Also, when you start to try to do it yourself, or I think that's the other thing is going to a BBL game will give you more appreciation of the NBA, but it will also give you more appreciation of how bad you are at basketball. Because I think the thing with the BBL, which I've observed from a distance whenever I've seen highlights online or speaking to probably people like yourself, there's a lot more tactics. There's a lot more, appreciation for the fundamentals of basketball. And I think, if you can get into those things as well, then you'll have a lot more appreciation for what happens in the NBA, because I think that's almost like meta at that level. You're trying to psych the other coach out, all these kind of things. The other coach knows everything you're going to do. You know everything they're going to do. Whereas in the BBL, I'd imagine there's not as much scouting in that same way. Not in the same level, anyway, of that meticulousness, because, they don't have the finance to do that, or the infrastructure. But it's fascinating also to just watch and just go. It's also amazing to think that there are people who are as tall as basketball players in the States in England, because I think in England especially, there's something quite unusual about that. Whereas when you go to the States, everyone's freakishly tall or freakishly fat or freakishly whatever. And I think they're a bit more used to it than we are.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I was starting to get into basketball, I was 5'0". I couldn't even touch the net. It was hard to even make layups.
How tall are you now?
Just under 6 foot.
Right. Okay. So you and I are roughly the same height. Yeah.
Yeah, about 5'11".
Yeah.
So I mean, I can just touch the net, but I had to develop a jump shot,
of course,
from an early age, because when you're 5 foot, you've got to push the ball pretty much to get any 3-point shot, and that was my shot. So now I come to play. I've grown significantly. I've got a bit stronger. I can hit threes from about quite beyond the arc at this point.
Yeah. Which takes a lot more strength.
Yeah,
it takes a lot of strength. I think a lot of people don't realize that, because I think basketball's a little heavier than a football, a lot heavier than football actually. But and when the way you're throwing it, the way you've got to heave it, the accuracy with which you've got to heave it. In football, it's a bit more right, let's try and put it roughly in that area. And if I'm lucky, it'll go roughly in that area. In basketball, it's it's got to go exactly in that area. If it's not in that area, it's a miss. And by the way, even if it's in that area, it's still possibly a miss. Probably a miss if it's you.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't appreciate that.
It is. It's one of those hard, because I will be playing basketball, isn't that hard? I'm like, you wait until you try and get that ball in that hoop, and they'll throw it like a netball. I'm like, first of all, you got your technique wrong. And there's more appreciation of this is actually quite hard now.
That's so true. Yeah, I agree.
But mentioning the BBL, London, for example, they have the first chance to actually get some eyes on the BBL with the Basketball Champions League that's happening right now. They're the first BBL team to come into the Champions League. So with that more mainstream attraction for the BBL, would you be interested in getting more eyes on the BBL, being involved more with it as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if it's not made more accessible, I'd still love to be part of something like that. I think it's great. But I also think, there's a real, especially for someone like me who's sort of established in other elements of the sports industry, it's also quite difficult for me to make a case for why it would be important for someone like me to do that. As much as I'd love to, I'd love to be part of it. I love basketball, and I definitely think I appreciate what the UK scene is like. I'd love to go to games. I'd love to go talk to people, but I'm also very conscious that there's a lot of young Black people out there who would definitely deserve an opportunity. There's a lot of young Asian guys. There's a lot of young women out there who probably deserve a spot in there. I'd be happy to go alongside those kind of people, but I think that's part of the problem right now is, a lot of people set it up as an either or. And actually in many ways, I think a real benefit would be to have people who are established in the industry, in football and even kind of dipping their toe into being established in basketball, to give some guidance on that. Because I'm not the thing I want to do is help people who are young journalists and those kind of things. And I think I've got at least some skills to be able to do that. I don't want to taint what little ideas are coming through, but I definitely want to help those people craft them. So yeah, I'd be definitely interested in that.
I mean, you definitely have the influence to help those people, develop a craft and help those people build the confidence. Is that exactly what you're doing right now? Having this interview with me is helping.
I'm doing this because you sent me a great email, and I'll be honest, I get a lot of emails with people wanting me to go on their podcast. So I'm, in no way is this like some form of patronizing. And I was just interested after I read your email.
Well, thank you very much for that. Yeah. I really appreciate it. But so there was something that doing my research that I was really interested in finding, and so what is so interesting about Patty Mills that you would have him on a banana boat with you, Kawhi, and Manu Ginobili?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a great point. I think it's more that Paddy just seems like a good guy. Like, he just seems like the kind of guy you want around a team. I mean, he's come back absolutely ripped from the lockdown. And, I don't know if that equates to you being better at basketball, but, he seems like a good person to have around. And I think if Greg Popovich likes him, then Greg can judge characters very well. And I'd be very happy to go along with whatever Greg's judgment is of any player. I'm not sure he's the greatest basketball player of all time, but I think if going along with the other people that you've named on the banana boat, I feel like he suits it quite well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Kawhi, you're not going to get many words out of other than
Although the more that you hear his voice or the more that you hear him express himself, the more you wonder whether in private, whether he is quite an expressive guy. But even then, the stories are like, no, he's not very expressive. He doesn't really say all that much or do all that much.
There's always talking on the court.
I mean, apparently he is. And he's a very vocal guy. I wonder whether he saves his energy or whether he's just more chill. I can't. The thing that I can't work out, and I think there was a good point made by, I can't remember which podcaster it was now, but they were like, Kawhi was so quiet that we always just assumed that he was quiet and hardworking and sort of a good guy, and he never argued with that. But maybe if we'd done a bit more research into Kawhi, we'd have been like, oh, Kawhi is actually like a straight killer or any of these things. And maybe it would change our perception of Kawhi if we knew a bit more about him.
Yeah, definitely. I love the clip. It was a LeBron taking some free throws.
Right.
The Kawhi gets subbed in, and he just looks back. He's like, God damn.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that says everything you need to know, because I think it makes LeBron's life so much harder when Kawhi's on the court. So even if LeBron can score, Kawhi is just so intense. I think his cardio must be incredible. I also just think his hands in general are probably like there, like literally, like they probably have another 4 or 5, like maybe even 4 inches on my hand. Like they look insane. And even against like a Paul George who can palm a basketball, I can just about palm a basketball, but you just think, well, Kawhi is basically holding like a baby's toy at that point in his hands or something.
Yeah.
You really get a good appreciation when you're actually around these guys. Because in Paris, I was very lucky to get close to the Hornets team, close to the Bucks team, and you start to see how big these people really are. And I think because they're all relatively the same size, you don't get that. But Kawhi really is insanely big.
He's absolutely. It's like a robot. He's like a mechanical working being that he just has. It's like the soundboard that you had. It's like internally he presses buttons to say stuff.
Do jump shot. Say comment about game, and not only that, but I think it's his proportions as well. I think that's what makes people so unusual. I think that's also the problem with basketball players, like their overall proportions are just out of kilter with the rest of what society deems to be normal at the moment. So it doesn't help their dress sense sometimes.
Oh yeah, like you see some people coming in dressed as Tin Man or oversized suits, and it's a lot of their fashion sense is just you're drawing attention for on purpose at this point.
Yeah, especially Russ. I think Russ is a very well dressed player, but he's had a few misses. Shall I put it that way? I'm really not sure about what James Harden wears sometimes, and I think KD just has to dress in the way that KD does because his body is that way. I don't know, but every now and again there's a good hit. Dame, I think, has a good dress sense, and I think Kuz definitely kind of. He's towards the end of the spectrum, towards what I would dress like if I looked like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I could pull off some of the outfits that the NBA players wear, and I would, but I think I'll stick to the checkered flannel.
To be honest, I think you're kind of on your way to Minnesota Timberwolf walking into a game at some point. Like you're definitely dressed like some sort of mid-level center right now. I think that's your vibe today.
Watch out, NBA fans! I'm coming as the new center for the.
Oh, absolutely. I also think that's part of it. Is like I look at these guys and I judge them on if I was like you, would I dress like that? Yeah. But the problem is sometimes I see something and I get so gassed up about it, and I'm like, oh, I should buy that. I'm going to look sick like that. And then when you go out in public, you're like, oh, I'm not an NBA player. Like I don't look that sick. But in the mirror, in the lift, all the way down. First foot goes out and I'm like, yeah, I need to go back in and get changed.
Yeah, instant eyes towards you. Like, I'm not feeling that confident anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And speaking of NBA style, like, do you own like a lot of NBA jerseys or? Like,
good question.
Attire?
Not as much as I'd like to. Although I also think there's a certain level you get to where you can't wear an NBA jersey every day, otherwise. You're basically revealing that you don't have any fashion sense. I do have quite a sizable jersey collection. I've got a few favorites in there. I've got a Kobe All-Star jersey. I've got a Kawhi Leonard from the last time we won the championship. Oh no, the first Nike jersey. And I did have, and it got lost in a move, but I was so upset about it. There was a Christmas in the NBA where they kind of had like handwritten Spurs, and it was Spurs with like a silver, and it was a Kawhi Leonard jersey, and it was amazing. Like, it was one of my favorite jerseys of all time. And I think the Cavs had one. They were like the color editions, I think they were called. And I had that. And then I've also got a Scottie Pippen jersey, a West jersey for the Lakers. I remember when I first went to New York, I tried to buy a Cleveland Cavaliers jersey from like a sports goods store. And in that time, Nelly videos were cool. And it was cool to wear them like down to your knees. And I remember that it was like $300, I think it was $300 dead on. And I went in the store and the guy was like, yeah, you're going to look sick in this, bro. You look sick in this. So I was like, yeah, I want a LeBron James jersey. All right, cool. So I get a LeBron James jersey and I'm standing there and I turn to my mom and she's just like, I'm not spending $300 on a fucking jersey that you'll wear and then realize it looks like a dress. So I got a t-shirt instead, but it was a good compromise. But I kind of upset I didn't get an original LeBron James jersey now, if that makes sense. So, and then I also just have a lot of, I've got like a lot of the Slam covers and things like that. I've obviously got this, which I class as a basketball shirt, and I bought one which says like Orlando Bubble Club or something like that, which I think is quite cool. And I'm also a big sneaker guy, so I think I'm more of a sneakers guy. I can't really pull Jordans off, but I will buy a lot. I've got some PGs, couple of pairs of Jordans, couple of pairs of Air Forces, and I think, you know, if you can style it a bit like an NBA player, then you're probably doing well by then. I'm a little bit lanky, a little bit weird looking like an NBA player, so I kind of feel like I can pull it off.
I mean, my shape's definitely not lanky, that's for sure. But
sure, yeah.
And but like, I mean, I love the shoes. I've got a few NBA jerseys that they're all.
What's your favorite? Oh, you Miami guy. Oh, okay. So you've got you must have a D-Wade jersey.
Yes, I have one. Right. I don't know where. Here it is.
It used to be behind.
It is. This one here.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that was. Yeah, I love that. That like Neon Miami was a great one.
Miami Vice jersey I picked up. I actually bought it this year for Christmas.
Nice.
So I was like, I'll treat myself. But having a job, I was like, the first thing I want is a Miami jersey. Like one of the, I think it was for my 16th birthday. All of my friends gathered around and bought me a jersey with my name on the back. I was like,
that's so generous.
It's insane. Like the detail, and they got my favorite number because I was playing 2K at the time.
Right.
My favorite, like my lucky number is number 8. And
right.
I would always put it on my 2K jerseys, and they were like down to the detail. They got me. I think it was the black and with the red on it. I was like, yeah, this is insane. So
that's a great jersey as well. Like if I mean, the Miami jersey in general is kind of a great jersey always because it's Miami. That they had their pick on black, which is partly why I also love the Spurs. But yeah, I think have you got a Shaq jersey?
No, I actually don't. I was kind of late to buying the jerseys because never really that
kind of guy, right?
Not really. It's like I never really had the money to do that.
Right.
So it was always prioritized somewhere else. Whereas now I kind of can be like, okay, I'll treat myself to a jersey and start, making it out to be like, oh yeah, let's show off these jerseys that I can.
Who would you get now?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Well, there's only really one answer for me in Miami, but I know who I would get, but you can pick whoever you want.
I would either say it would either be a Bam jersey.
Great choice. Yeah. Don't say all. It's just that's a great choice. No. Who's your other one?
I was going to say Tyler Herro because he's one for the future.
Sure. Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
As I said before, like I'm a really big fan of guards. I'm a really I love guys that can shoot the ball. And yeah, like I don't think a lot of people do have the appreciation for Tyler Herro that I might have, but he's a great player, and I think he's definitely one for Miami's future.
Completely agree. Yeah, I think you're pretty much set for at least a couple of seasons now. I think you just need a couple more, maybe one more piece, and you might be in a great position.
Yeah, definitely. And so I'm maybe going to steal a bit of the banana boat thing. However, I'm going to add a little bit of a twist.
Sure.
So you are hosting a dinner party.
Right.
You are allowed 4 NBA players and 1. Actually, I'll let you have 2 coaches.
Right.
In the NBA. Who are you picking and why?
I see why you've given me 2 coaches now.
Yeah.
Well,
'Cause I
it's
know you
easy. It's
picked Greg.
easy. It's easy with the coaches. Yeah, because Greg is an easy choice, and I do think that Steve Kerr goes along well with Greg.
Yeah.
And I also think, I mean, Greg Popovich is very famous in the first place for his great appreciation of food and the good team meals that the Spurs players have. So I think that would be great. Do they have to be current, or can I?
No, all-time
Okay.
players.
Along with that, in that case, then I would 100% go with Kobe, because I think his appreciation of someone like Greg Popovich and Steve Kerr would be very high, and there would be some incredible conversation between those three. I'd probably go with Tony, because I think Tony's quite affable as a guy. Like I've kind of come into close contact with him before, and he was very nice. I want a young basketball player like who would I go for that's young in the league that I can get? I might actually go for Ja Morant, because I feel like Ja would be an interesting dinner guest and would learn a lot from these other guys. Actually, no, let me strike that. I want Jason Tatum. Sorry, my bad. And the final player that I want, this is a hard question. Have I already said Bam Adebayo?
No,
then Bam Adebayo. Right. So what a diverse table I have. First of all, everyone needs different heights of chair. But secondly, I think that's a pretty perfect table for me. And the person I'd kind of like to, just be around and maybe announce the dishes would be Mutombo, just because I feel like I'd like to hear the dishes announced in his voice.
It's the starter.
Yeah.
That would be great.
He's got a perfect voice. I think he's a great guy.
I think if you swapped his voice and the Cookie Monsters, I don't think anyone would know.
I think a lot of people probably would appreciate it even more if Mutombo's voice was generally used. Like I feel like he's got that. It's just such a unique sound. Like you want that. You want people. You want to be able to talk and people go, I know that.
We need a soundboard of Mutombo now.
In fact, that might happen for the next podcast. So yeah.
I will be definitely tuning in to see that one.
Yeah, good. I'm glad. Yeah.
So we head into the final segment of this interview now, and it's called Crunch Time.
Right.
A series of questions where we head into the crunch time. It's a final 6 questions that I'd like to ask you and get your take on. So. Hi guys, it's Reece from the British basketball scene. I hope you're enjoying this video. If you are, could you slam dunk that like button and share with your friends? Whilst you're at it, please subscribe to the channel. It would mean the absolute world. Now let's get back to Laurence Mckenna answering questions in crunch time. Why do you think basketball isn't as relevant in the UK?
We just don't have the cultural appreciation for it, I don't think. And I think it's not been built up in the same way. If it is over time, and I think some people have that inclination that it will be that going that way. I think there's a lot of people like me, like a few friends who are interested, and I think it is slowly penetrating the culture. But at the same time, there's I think it's just basketball feels niche, and so it's going to take its time to get there. And I kind of like that. I don't want it to be a easy come, easy go kind of thing. And I think sometimes we have that. I think NFL is definitely helping NBA as well, because people are going, oh, American sports, right? Okay, and I'm fine with that. Like I love NFL and I love NBA.
And sort of leading on from that, when do you see basketball getting the recognition like inside England? Like when do you think that will come about?
I mean, I definitely think there's already a lot of recognition, but I think in mainstream it's going to be quite some time. But I do think Sky having it will help. They've got the rights, I think, until 2024.
Yeah.
It would help, I think, if maybe the game's going to come back at some point. I think it might go all over Europe. It was definitely a packed stadium when we went to the O2. Good. But I think given another 5 years and we'll probably see a critical mass of people, I think it's really going to take a streaming platform that push it to make it into something in the UK, make it very accessible, because right now it's not as accessible. And I think, an Amazon or maybe even Sky coming up with their own thing that works, or even a Google like YouTube or, Twitch, something like that. I think that'll be when it hits.
How would you recommend for those to get into a position as you are right now and just like sort of working inside like basketball and being the sports presenter that you are?
I was quite lucky. I think I definitely benefited from some sort of white privilege along the way in like quite a few different iterations. I was very sociable. I think being sociable really helps, and going out and meeting people, making an impression on them in some way, be that good or bad. Talking to people, it wasn't about that was part of the reason I appreciated your email. I did think it was a good, well-crafted email, but it showed that you were actually thinking about something we could do together. I think some people send very sort of aimless emails, just sort of going, do you think there's something we could do? And it's like, I've got a son, I've also got a job, and my life can't be based around, do you think there's something we could do here? You never, the funny thing is that I know that's more because people sort of go, well, if I give him something very specific, he might reject it. It's like, give me something I can reject rather than something that I'm just like, well, what is this? Like, it's the commitment to something, I think, that made a difference. And I'm not saying that I was overly committed to presenting or overly committed to those things, but I just enjoyed it, and I was in the right place at the right time. And I think the more you can put yourself out there, the more that you can be like, hey, here I am talking to people in a press box or on the sideline or with players. And not only that, but I think some people try and make a name for themselves. I wasn't out there trying to go, I'm Laurence, like, see me. It's very easy to be a personality. And because that comes quite naturally for a lot of people. You are your own personality. It's also very easy to say very sensational things. It doesn't really give you the longevity, though, of a Woj or someone like that, who Zach Lowe or someone, or even, maybe Bill Simmons isn't the best example right now, but I think, he made a name for himself through making documentaries and through having some outlandish opinions. But I think maybe Lowe and Woj are a better example. And that for me was what was important. And maybe now I'm more of a character, but it's behind the scenes. I've still got a lot of opinions. I still just love talking to people, and it's nice I like to think that I'm a good friend. So
thinking of this one just off the cuff, you mentioned that you have a son, and I'd like to congratulate you on that. It's a very special moment and a magical moment for any person that wants a family, and congratulations for I'm sure that your partner did all the hard work, but
she is doing all in many ways she does all the hard work. Feeding a child from when it's born is massive, but also obviously birth is not really something that's particularly hard work for me, but it's also so rewarding. Like, tiny things are very rewarding when you feel like you have a bond with someone. And we've already got him a Spurs jersey. We've already got him, Uncle Bryant got him a Lakers jersey and a Chicago Bulls jersey. So he's very lucky to be surrounded by people as well. Uncle Mo bought him the Spurs jersey, I will say that. And I do have a jersey which says McKenna on the back, which Mo bought. It's a very sweet present. And, I think it's things like that where, from a very young age, he's going to be watching basketball. So I hope that when we get him a hoop and put it in the corner of the room, he's going to be inclined to dunk, or if I'm really lucky, he'll shoot a three, at which point I'll be like, get this kid to Florida.
Stick him in the bubble right away.
Stick him in the bubble. All I need is for Tyler Herro to just look after him for a couple of days. It's fine. Or Jimmy Butler to just break him down.
So what advice do you have stored, say when your son gets to a certain age where he is looking for advice on his career? What advice would you give him to follow his dreams?
To follow your dreams. I think a lot of people, I read a really great book not long ago by the author's name was Epstein, but don't let that get in the way of it. And I think, I can't remember what the book was called now. I will remember it in a second. And it was basically about this concept of, a lot of people have this idea that you have to be Tiger Woods, or you have to be Cristiano Ronaldo, or you have to be Messi in order to be the best in your job, because these guys have apparently focused on football their whole lives, right? And this book breaks down that idea of it being like that you have to do one thing for a very long amount of time to get good at it. And Roger Federer is the opposite, where Federer is, he played volleyball, football. He played pretty much all sports that you could when he was a kid, and tennis was part of that. And then when he was 18, he was like, I really enjoy tennis. I think I can take it further. The story is obviously more complex than that, but you get the point. Like, he was physically doing all these things that were giving him lots of different skills, and he was stretching himself mentally. He was creating new neural pathways and, kind of gearing himself up to be ready for challenges and not just conventionally move in the way that a tennis coach would want him to. And that, I think, is what I've learned in my career, is when what little I can call a career. Like when I was least expecting that something would come along, something came along. And very often it was from the opportunity that I thought would least kind of be that pathway. And, you know, that came in football, and I went and did a road trip in football, and I met a guy who did a blog because I had an argument with him about whether real grass or fake grass was a thing and whether it was putting this team off, or we had a debate. And from there, I did like a 3-year podcast with this guy, and not one long 3-year podcast. We did a podcast every week. And that got me a job with Adidas. And then that got me a job with someone else. And then that got me a job with another football company. And things build, and you have to be willing to build. It's not going to come along as one like thing, and you're just going to go, yep, there it is. Like, I've made ESPN, and I'm sure there are a lot of people that can do that. But you have to see your place in that. And I think people at ESPN will understand. And, you know, I'm watching a Rupert Murdoch documentary at the moment. You have to understand where you fit into the world. And it doesn't mean like be small or shrink or don't be out there. It means like, understand how you fit into other people's lives and how you can be useful, or you can be, you know, you can be a great collaborator. Because I don't think that's the interesting part that I found. You never play the same role in someone else's life. Like, you'll play 10 different roles in 10 different people's lives. And that's all of those roles could be really important roles. And you never know which one might be an important role. You never know what's going to lead on to something else. So for me, it's about that, the appreciation of diversity in your life, and the appreciation of, you know, being able to walk into a room and not necessarily be like, right, this is all I do and I am this person, and being fixed with that. I don't know if that helps anyone.
Yeah, I mean, that's some fantastic.
Is that advice? Or, yeah, was that just a story?
It's sort of just like you follow your own narrative pretty much, and like,
right,
you kind of go your route, but like make sure that you don't immediately think that gratification is coming, and you know, and work hard for what you want to get.
And also, and you know, like, attach yourself, or you don't have to attach yourself, but you know, the people around you are going to influence you. And I was really lucky at very key times to have like older men in my life who just gave me great pieces of advice. And you know, they didn't talk to me for long. I didn't need hours and hours and hours with them. I just needed like these guys to be like, hey, maybe you should try this, or maybe you should try this. And I listened to them. And that really helped. And I think at the moment, like, there's a lot of people who aren't that good at listening. They're actually like just transmitters, and they just sort of go, here's my opinion. And you're like, well, that's fucked. So you know, I've spoken a lot more, and I think you and I should probably speak more. But you know, I'm interested in listening to people. And I think, you know, that really helped with Brian and I, and that's what's the key to our great podcast, or our great podcast success has been, is listening to each other, and, you know, picking apart and delving into what the other person is actually saying. Because that's partly, you know, we'll go back to that, who's the greatest of all time debate. So often the greatest of all time debate seems to be more like a wrestling match where you're trying to get the other person into a submission, and it's like, say he's the best of all time. And it's like, well, even if that person taps, they're still going to get out the tap and be like, yeah, whatever, and walk away and be like, I still think LeBron James is the best. It doesn't really matter if you get someone to submit or not. Like, it's the conversation and what you're exploring that's going to get you so much more. Maybe that's a bit preachy, but you know, it makes sense to me.
No, it 100%. Like, I think a lot of people, you know, when you do listen to more opinion, I think that just in everyday life as well. Like, when you listen to other people's opinions and have that appreciation for their culture and what they have to say, is
totally,
you know, it's very important for just everyday life, not necessarily just basketball. I think that's very important. What this generation should try to establish in making a better generation.
I think it was Oscar Wilde, maybe. I think it was Oscar Wilde, it might have been Mark Twain. One or the other, who said like the measure of an intelligent mind is that you can hold a thought without it completely taking over your brain, and it being like that, you know, you can evaluate it, you can look at it, you can like hold it in the air and sort of assess it. And I think a lot of people right now, and I'm definitely guilty of this as well, get an idea, we're very inspired by it, and we go with it, and then we're suddenly like, oh, I should have critically evaluated that idea, or I should have stepped back and thought about that. And that's partly what we're not doing as journalists right now, even in politics or in any of these places. We're not really being critically evaluative. We're not critically evaluating people. And we're losing a lot because of that, if I'm completely honest. Like, we need to be honest, we need to be honest with people like the NBA, and the NBA need to be able to appreciate us. And the same with the BBL. Like, I'd hope that when people hear me on the podcast saying I don't think it's a particularly easy community to get into, they wouldn't go, oh, well, screw him. Like, we don't need him. It's like, well, if that's someone's experience, maybe it's a good idea to listen to that and build with that, or go to that person and go, why did you feel that way? Do you want to come down or whatever? That I think is very key.
Yeah, definitely. And you listen to those opinions, like let's form a community and show, like we can be very open and like not take it as like constructive criticism when it's not necessarily the the great, like the nicest opinion to say, but it does need to be said.
Believe me, I've learned that online. Yeah.
Oh, of course, you've probably come across a lot of comments for
many.
Sure.
Many. Yeah.
I would not like to be in your shoes at that moment.
Oh, it's fine. It's really I've learned a lot from them, and I think it's always important to have someone who will challenge you around.
Oh, absolutely. And what would you say is your dream role inside of basketball?
I'd love to be. Oh, that's a really great question. In terms of the court side sort of thing, I think to be a coach would be incredible, but I just don't have the tactical knowledge to do that. I'd love to be the towel guy, because it's such a key role, but not the one who does the court, but the guy who hands the towels out to the player. Because you get on the bench, but you don't, you don't have any of the responsibility of the coach, but you are important still, and you're still part of the team. I'd love to be a coach, but I'd also love to, if it was a media side thing, I think I'd love to, I don't think I want to be on camera. I want to direct a basketball game. And the one thing I'd love to know about the NBA, and the thing that I have had a bit of insight into, is how they manage their media, like how they get all these clips out so quick, how they get all these cameras into one place, how all this happens, because that fascinates me. I think that's such an amazing achievement for the NBA and for any sport in general. Like, getting all of your clips, getting all of your content, getting all of this stuff to show people the story is incredible. But I think the NBA does it better than anyone. And one role I'd love, here's the one role I'd love. Right, I've got it. Right, from all that talking, I managed to find it. I want to be the guy who, when it gets to the finals, I get to make the mini movie that goes along with the final, like the 10 or 12 or 20-minute film where they bring all these different pieces together, the phantom cam and the in-game commentary and the out cameras and all the cameras of the players walking in, and make that film. That's my dream, is to one day be the guy who can put the mini movie that is out post-finals.
I hope to see in 2025. Oh, this short movie of the Miami and Spurs finals.
Brilliant.
Directed by Laurence Mckenna.
Absolutely. And you know what I really love, and I think the only reason that's not going to happen is because the San Antonio Spurs are going to be in no shape to do that by 2025 So good luck.
A big rebuilding period. One can dream. One can dream.
Yeah, believe me, I'm dreaming more about Bam Adebayo right now than I am about a rebuild of the Spurs. So
who wouldn't be dreaming about that, man? He's fantastic.
Dreamy. Yeah, seems like a lovely guy.
So those that are probably watching this, because a lot of the viewers will be fans of yours, they will know that you have interviewed a lot of extremely characteristic and a lot of great characters in your time. Who would you say is the top 3 people that you've spoken to on either a podcast or maybe just even outside of off camera?
Good question. I can give you a couple. So when I first started my career, I got this job with Adidas. It was quite early on. It wasn't the very beginning, but I got a job with Adidas, and I spoke to Mark Van Bommel, who was at that point playing for AC Milan. I think he was more towards the tail end of his career, but he was a real beast out on the field and not a particularly nice guy to be around on the field. And I remember the Adidas exec came over to me, or the woman from the PR agency came over, and she was like, "Do you want to interview Mark Van Bommel?" And I was like, And the guy next to me looked at me and was like, "No, man, he's not nice. He's a nasty guy." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." So I walk in and I've got some pre-prepared questions, and he can clearly see that I'm maybe a little bit nervous to be interviewing a footballer. And I was quite nervous when I first started, but by the end of it, I realized it was almost like the conversation that you and I are having, where we're just super chatty, we're both very relaxed. And he was kind of touching my leg by the end of it. And I remember just being like, we are very relaxed together, aren't we? And not quite understanding the dynamic, but he was so lovely. He was such a lovely guy. That was such a confidence boosting interview because it made me think, right, these people are just humans. And he was giving me all these little bits of insight, and he was telling me things about how he wanted to go to Spurs and all this sort of thing. And he was just lovely. And that was a real confidence booster. Ricky Gervais is an all-time interview that I love. He's incredible. He was the man. And, talking to your comedy hero, I think is incredible. Yeah. And who else have I interviewed? Ian Wright, I think, is always a very special interview because Ian Wright is such a special guy. He's so giving. He's such a lovely person. He's so genuine in all the stuff that he says. And I think I've worked with Ian quite a few times, or I've been lucky enough to, I've not been the guy who's got picked, but I've been lucky to be part of the team, and I've directed him a few times. And he listens so intently. He takes feedback so well, and he's not at all arrogant, which is like such a great thing to work with, because when you're a young director like I was at that time and you want someone to do something, it's so frustrating when you go, so we try like this, and they're like, nah, I don't really do that. And then to interview him was a real gift because he was so open with us, and he's such a great guy.
Yeah, you have. I think Ian Wright is like one of those people that you sort of want to have as as you say, like a young either producer or interviewer. That he is really good at like understanding a lot of those things, and the more you get of those types of players, like it is hard for you not to be very egotistical when you are in that spot, when you are the winner of the first Premier League Golden Boot, and to have that, it's like you do actually have to have some sort of ego, but he comes across as a guy that's not very.
He's a grown man. And I think he had an ego at the right time, and he probably does still have an ego, but I think that ego probably drives him towards being a better person. And he's always so pleasant to be around. So I'd say Ian Wright with Ricky Gervais and Mark Van Bommel.
Especially with the leg touching.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For all three of them, ideally. I mean, Ian is a lovely hugger. Really lovely hugger. And there was a very sort of proud moment where we got to pose with Ricky Gervais, like framing our face like him as David Brent. And that was like, I don't know. I remember my like 16 or 17-year-old self was just like, oh my God, you just met Ricky Gervais and done that, which was insane.
Look, those are three phenomenal guests. And I watched the Ian Wright one. It was lovely. Absolutely brilliant. So. And
I'm lucky to be part of that podcast because, I think Brian could easily have done this without me, and, it would still be a raging success. But I think, I'm lucky to be part of that duo and kind of interview such incredible celebrities. So.
I mean, you had that impartiality when Alan Shearer comes on.
When Brian's just covered in his own semen, when Alan Shearer comes in, it's difficult, it's tricky.
You got to keep him grounded.
Yeah, exactly. Although again, it's hard when someone's just covered in their own semen.
So the final sort of question I have is, where would you like to see yourself in 5 years' time?
Good question. It's very clear to me. I want to do more directing. Like I want to be behind the camera a lot more. And I'm kind of building for that. Lockdown's been a great time to prepare to have a child and also prepare a lot of like the next step of our careers. So that's where I want to be. I want to be directing more stuff, and I'd love to be known for that. I love taking photos. I love making videos, and those are the two things that I think that's where my passion lies, and I think I can capture. I'm more effective there, if that makes sense. And I want to craft that because I think Brian and I both feel that we are at a great point where we feel like we're good interviewers. We feel like we can really get a story out of someone. It's not that we've completed it by any sense. We can still very much evolve that way, but we know the podcast will always be there. We know those things will always be there, and it's time for both of us, I think, we are at the moment very consciously supporting the other person in growing what they want to do. And I think that's such a rewarding aspect of a friendship, is when you can, what's the phrase? You can help someone else grow. And I think, Brian and I are both sort of really appreciating doing that right now. It's very rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I let you go, because I know you are a busy guy, as you say you are.
I've got Brian coming over actually. When I hang up on you, I'm then going to open the front door to Bryant. So we're going to have some lunch together. He's going to meet my child. So
I hope you enjoy your lunch. But
it's going to be lovely.
Before you head off, explain to those fans that aren't necessarily in tune with your Hoop Genius podcast. Just give a little bit of an explanation of what it is about and who you're involved with.
Right. So I met Mo about a year and a bit ago now, and Mo Munsi and Yanni, I think it's Aruba, but I swear I'm doing a second name disservice. And they were just great guys. And I'd known Yanni quite a while, and he was like, got to meet this guy called Mo. He's so sick. Like, you know, and I knew the guy who was producing their show. And I went on it as a guest, and I hit it off with Mo so easily because he's such an easy to talk to guy. He's so insightful. He was so, he's a cool guy. And we now do a podcast together called the Hoop Genius Podcast, where we just sit down every week, talk about basketball, joke about it. And I think the thing that I love about it is, you know, I always come away with something. I always come away with some sort of knowledge because, there's a tendency, I think, when you've read all the news cycles to feel like you know everything. But then when you hang out with someone like Mo, you will never know everything. And there's something quite rewarding about that. And I hope that as a podcast experience, that makes it good to listen to, because we're obviously discovering things together. Or, you know, I'm discovering things from Mo, and as the interviewer, the guy who's trying to ask questions, that's kind of my job. So it's a great podcast where we just discuss basketball every week. And it is, it's an hour of just us chilling out and talking. And, you know, it is well crafted. It's really good fun. And Yanni and Mo are two of the most insightful guys in the UK for basketball right now. So.
Absolutely, and that shows with their work with Sky Sports and everything that they're doing. They are two of the best guys to go to for basketball, and for any fans of basketball. If you want to just kind of casually dip your toes in, the Hoop Genius podcast is, or just the Hoop Genius channel in general, is a massive advocate for British for getting into getting involved in basketball for maybe those that aren't necessarily in tune with the sport.
If the BBL are listening, get Mo. Mo's amazing. And Yanni is incredible too. Yanni could do a great job on and off camera. He's one of the most talented young guys in the industry right now, who's sort of a rising star. So I think, Yanni's a great guy. He's doing really great stuff.
So the link to that channel will be in the description down below. Please go and check that out. Not necessarily because, you know, my fans are going to be here, because there's not a lot of them. However,
it's building. That's the point. You don't. Yeah. I think I see you and I were at similar points, and I never, like you're doing, you never want to go, give up because I've not got a million people watching every video. But in time, you probably will.
Keep doing it like you enjoy it.
Yeah, it's perfect. Great. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for joining me. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Laurence Mckenna.
Do I salute? Yeah, I say thank you. Thank you very much.